Convair F106 Delta Dart wasn't born in isolation. It was the direct successor to the F102 Delta Dagger, America's first supersonic missile-armed interceptor. But where the F102 had been a stepping stone, the F106 was the finished product. Sleeker, faster, and far more advanced, it was built for a single purpose: to stand guard day and night against the most terrifying threat of the Cold War, a Soviet nuclear strike launched from high-flying bombers. Nicknamed the Ultimate Interceptor, the F106 represented the peak of the dedicated interceptor concept. It never fired a shot in anger, yet it spent nearly 3 decades on constant alert, ready for a war that never came. This is the story of the Delta Dart, the last pure interceptor America would ever build. The F106 was the pinnacle of the Century series. At its core was the Pratt & Whitney J75 turbojet, producing up to 24,500 pounds of thrust with afterburner. In the lighter airframe of the Delta Dart, this meant blistering performance, sustained Mach 2.3 speeds, and a service ceiling above 57,000 feet. For nearly a decade, no other US fighter could match its straight-line speed. The heart of its combat capability was the Hughes MA-1 fire control system, a groundbreaking computer radar suite that linked the aircraft to the SAGE network. With SAGE, ground-based controllers could track incoming Soviet bombers and even transmit commands directly to the F-106. In theory, the aircraft could be guided into intercept positions automatically, with the pilot simply monitoring the systems until the moment came to fire. Weapons were housed in an internal bay, preserving the Dart's supersonic profile. The standard loadout included 4 AIM-4 Falcon missiles or 1 Air-2 Genie rocket, a short-range nuclear-tipped missile intended to wipe out entire bomber formations in a single blast. Later in its life, after lessons learned from Vietnam, some F-106 were modified to carry the M61 Vulcan cannon in a removable pod under the fuselage, a recognition that even the most advanced missile interceptors might still need a gun. Aerodynamically, the aircraft was refined far beyond the F-102. Its slim, wasp-waist fuselage followed the aerial rule, minimizing drag at transonic speeds. The sharply swept delta wing provided stability at high altitude and high speed, while also giving space for fuel and electronics, a true product of its single-minded design philosophy. The first F-106 prototype took flight on December 26, 1956, with Convair chief test pilot Richard L. Johnson at the controls. Johnson, who had also flown the F-102's maiden flight, found the Dart fast and capable, but far from flawless. Early flights revealed serious issues. The Hughes MA-1 system was temperamental, prone to breakdowns, and notoriously difficult for ground crews to maintain. Stability at high speeds also required constant refinement. But the Air Force was determined to press ahead, because nothing else promised the same performance. By 1959, the F-106A entered service, followed by the 2-seat F-106B trainer. Though envisioned as a mass-produced frontline interceptor, production ended after just 340 aircraft, a fraction of the number built for the F-102. Each one, however, represented the cutting edge of Cold War air defense. And in December 1959, the F-106 proved its capability in a spectacular fashion. During testing at Edwards Air Force Base, Major Joseph Rogers set a world speed record for single-engine aircraft, Mach 2.31 at 40,000 feet. The record stood for years and confirmed the Delta Dart's place as one of the fastest interceptors ever built. For the Air Force, this was validation. The F-106 was ready to take its place as America's ultimate shield against Soviet bombers. The F-106 production run was short, but over its 3 decades of service, it adapted into several important forms. The F-106A was the backbone of the fleet, a single-seat interceptor fully armed with Falcons and Air-2 Genies. This was the aircraft that stood watch at bases from Alaska to Florida, ready to climb at a moment's notice. Training new pilots to handle the Delta Darts required its own solution. That came in the F-106B, a 2-seat trainer version with dual controls and full combat capability. unlike many trainers, it didn't strip out systems. Students and instructors could carry out live intercepts just as they would in frontline aircraft. Many units flew the F106B interchangeably with the single-seat model. As the Dart began aging out of service in the 1980s, the Air Force found a new use for it: remotely piloted drones. Converted into QF-106s, these aircraft were used for missile testing and live-fire training. Uniquely, many QF-106s could still be flown by pilots when needed, before switching back to drone mode. These conversions extended the Dart's flying career well into the 1990s. Experimental projects also touched the Delta Dart. Some tested improved radars, missile systems, and even early versions of what would become the AIM-20 AMRAAM. While none led to major redesigns, they demonstrated the aircraft's ability to support upgrades long after its debut. Though it lacked the sprawling variant family of the F-4 Phantom or F-105 Thundersheath, the F-106 adapted as the Cold War evolved. A single design stretched across 3 decades of changing technology. From the moment it entered service in 1959, the F-106 became the tip of the spear for America's continental air defense. Stationed at bases across the United States and Alaska, Dart squadrons sat on constant alert, engines primed to launch within minutes of a Soviet incursion. For much of its career, the F-106 lived not in combat zones, but in silence, a deterrent force that existed to prevent the unthinkable. The aircraft did take part in several tense moments. During the Cuban Missile Crisis of 1962, the F-106s were dispersed to forward air bases armed with nuclear-tipped Air-2 Genie rockets. Had the crisis escalated, they would have been among the first to intercept Soviet bombers headed towards the US mainland. Overseas, the F-106 made occasional deployments, but unlike the F-102, it was never sent to Vietnam. Its mission remained firmly focused on homeland defense. Pilots respected it as a fast, stable, and precise aircraft, one of the finest interceptors of its generation. But by the 1970s, the strategic picture was changing. Soviet ICBMs replaced bombers as the primary nuclear threat. Air combat itself had shifted toward multi-role fighters like the F-15 Eagle and F-16 Fighting Falcon, which could defend the skies while also striking targets on the ground. A dedicated interceptor was no longer what the Air Force needed. The F-106 began a gradual drawdown, replacing Air Defense Command by the F-15. By 1988, the last Darts left frontline service, though the QF-106 drones kept flying into the mid-90s. In the end, the aircraft that never fired a shot in anger had spent nearly 3 decades as America's silent sentinel, guarding the skies day and night through some of the most dangerous years of the Cold War. The Convair F-106 Delta Dart was the last of its kind, the final, most advanced, pure interceptor ever built by the United States. Where the F-102 Delta Dagger had struggled, the Dart excelled. And although war never came, the F-106 remained ready through every tense moment of the Cold War. Its legacy endures not in combat records, but in the respect of the pilots who flew it and the engineers who designed it. For nearly 30 years, the F-106 stood guard as a sleek defender, waiting for a war that thankfully never arrived. And with that, we've reached the end of the Century series, all the way from the Super Sabre to the Delta Dart. I just want to say thank you to everyone who's been watching from the beginning and to everyone who's joined along the way. This series started as a passion project, and your support has turned it into something much bigger. Don't worry, this isn't the end of the channel, of course. Although the Century series may be finished, there are plenty of more stories I want to explore. So if you've enjoyed this journey, please stick around because we're just getting started. Anyways, I appreciate you for watching the video and sticking to the end, and I'll see you in the next one.